A king doesn't just die, he vanishes on the battlefield, leaving his empire clawing at the air like a headless beast, choking on its own chaos. Another slips beneath the black mouth of a lake, swallowed whole, never to crawl back into the sunlight. And one sails into the endless Atlantic, chasing the cursed edge of the world, perhaps even stumbling onto America, centuries before that bloated thief Columbus ever claimed it. These aren't fairy tales. They aren't bedtime whispers. They're brutal truths carved into the bones of history. Real kings, real crowns, and real disappearances that ripped apart kingdoms, toppled dynasties, and left entire nations bleeding. Their ghosts still stalk the ruins, sneering, laughing at the living who can't stop asking where they went. So sharpen your knives, because tonight we're not telling cozy stories. We're digging up the 11 royals who vanished into the abyss. Never found, never forgiven, still poisoning history with their absence. Number 1. King Sebastian of Portugal, the boy king who thought he was Christ's personal executioner. Portugal, 1578. The empire is bloated with wealth. Gold pours in from Brazil, spices rot on Lisbon's docks, cathedrals glow like jeweled tombs. And at the rotten core sits Sebastian, barely 24. Blonde, blue-eyed, raised by monks instead of a mother, bottle-fed on crusader myths until he believed one thing: God chose me to conquer. His obsession? Morocco. His advisors begged him to stay. They pleaded with him not to gamble the kingdom, but Sebastian was deaf, drunk on holy delusion. In June 1578, he dragged 17,000 men across the sea, knights polished to mirrors, priests screeching blessings, banners stitched with gold crosses snapping in the wind. They marched into the desert like they were invincible. But the desert doesn't kneel, it devours. Horses collapsed, water turned to sludge, sandstorms stripped the sky. By the time the real fight came, they were already half dead. August 4th, the Battle of Alcácer Quibia, a slaughterhouse in the sand. Drums thundered. Moroccan cavalry split the Portuguese lines wide open. Camels shrieked. Blades cracked bone. The battlefield turned into a sea of blackened blood. And Sebastian? The little holy warrior vanished. Some claimed a severed head and a golden helmet was his, half-eaten by vultures. But when the visor lifted, the face was too mangled to know. By nightfall, half of Portugal's nobility were corpses. Whole dynasties gone in a single afternoon. Historians mark that day as the start of Portugal's slow death. But back home, the fools whispered, "He's alive. He'll return. God will send him back." They called it Sebastianism. Impostors appeared across Europe. Peasants fell to their knees. Nobles clung to fantasies. The nation begged for a savior that never came. What did come was Spain, swallowing Portugal whole in 1580, choking its independence for 60 years. All because a delusional child chased glory into the sands and fed his kingdom to the vultures. And still, some Portuguese mutter his name in the dark, waiting for footsteps that will never echo again. Because the worst fear isn't losing a king, it's realizing anyone we love can vanish. No body, no goodbye, just silence. Sebastian was only the first. The next king built castles like fairy tales, and then slipped beneath the black water of a lake, never to rise again. Number 2. King Ludwig II of Bavaria, the dreamer who drowned in darkness. Bavaria, 1886. Mist coils around white stone towers. Neuschwanstein Castle claws at the sky like a hallucination, a fairy tale fortress rising out of the pines. Inside stalks King Ludwig, tall, pale, his eyes fixed on worlds no one else can see. He whispers of swans, fairies, impossible kingdoms. He builds castles like a lunatic architect of dreams, bleeding Bavaria's treasury dry. Gold vanishes into chandeliers, crystal, and murals of knights who never lived. Ministers hiss, "Our king is insane," but artists, they worship him. June 1886, they strike. They drag him down, declare him insane, lock him in Berg Castle like a dangerous animal. And then comes June 13th. Ludwig asks for a walk by Lake Starnberg. A doctor shadows him. Hours pass, night falls, lanterns burn along the black water. Then screams rip through the dark. The king and his doctor are found floating face down, dead. But when they drag Ludwig's body to shore, something reeks. His lungs hold no water. He did not drown. Instead, bruises, finger-shaped purple, merciless, circle his throat. Someone had throttled him long before the lake could swallow him. Officials sneer, suicide. But whispers burn hotter. Did the ministers murder him to shut him up? Did he try to escape? Or was it a ritual execution masked as tragedy? His people wept because their swan king, their mad builder of impossible castles, was gone. Even now, Bavaria shudders with the question, was Ludwig a madman? Or a prophet crushed by jealous little men with sharper knives? Today, millions wander his castles, gawking at the dream palaces he left behind. But their creator? Still a ghost, drifting beneath black waters. And sometimes in the marble halls of Neuschwanstein, the echo lingers. Was he insane? Or simply too brilliant for a world that wanted him strangled silent? But Ludwig was not the last to vanish. Our next king ruled an empire of golden temples, then rode into the Burmese jungle and never returned. Number 3. King Anarata of Pagan, the king who vanished into godhood. Burma, 1077. Along the Irrawaddy River, golden stupas claw at the sky like a forest of burning spears. Birds circle overhead, wheeling in sunlight that blinds. On a terrace of scarlet and gold, King Anarata gazes down at the empire he hammered from warring tribes into a single, glittering kingdom. He is the architect of Pagan. Its temples rise by the hundreds, a city of stone blazing under the tropical sun. But kings don't stay on thrones. One summer morning, he leaves Pagan on horseback, riding into the jungle for a royal inspection. Hours pass. The sun climbs higher, pressing down like fire. Cicadas shriek. The jungle hums with drums that no one can see. But no king, no horse, no guards return. Only silence. Then the whispers start. Villagers claim they hear phantom drums beating in the depths, as if some invisible procession marches endlessly through the trees. Some swear they glimpse him. A rider in golden robes flashing between bamboo stalks, his face glimmering like polished metal. For weeks, voices echo out of the jungle, a king calling in an unknown tongue, answered by those eternal drums. The chronicles argue. Some say he was ambushed by rebellious tribes, hacked apart, and left for the vultures. Others whisper that the Nats, spirits of Burma, dragged him off alive, chosen, anointed, stolen into immortality. But his temples still stand. They catch the sun and throw it back like a challenge to the gods. Pilgrims shuffle barefoot across stone floors, whispering prayers to a vanished king who may have become divine. Even today, monks light candles in pagan shrines and pause, ears tilted toward the dark, listening for voices that should not exist. Because in Burma, power is not just political, it's godlike, and kings who vanish do not rot. They ascend, becoming gods who never truly leave. After all, it's easier to believe our rulers became holy than to choke down the truth that they were swallowed whole by the jungle and forgotten. But not every missing king ascends to heaven. Some don't become gods at all. Some vanish into the dust and shadows of murder, like the next ruler who fought for freedom and disappeared on a lonely road. Number 4. Tsar Ivan Asen I of Bulgaria, the king who vanished on the frozen road. 12th century Bulgaria. Wind howls across the snow-capped mountains, clawing at Tarnovo fortress. Inside its stone halls sits Ivan Asen, tall, black-bearded, eyes hard as iron, a man not born to rule but forged by rebellion. Once a minor noble, he rose in fire and blood, leading the uprising that drove the Byzantine Empire out and dragged Bulgaria back to life. He rules with a clenched fist. He taxes Byzantine trade routes, dreams of a Balkan empire free of foreign chains. Yet he is not only iron, he rebuilds churches charred by war, shelters monasteries deep in the forests. To his people, he is both sword and shield, but empires do not forgive. Enemies wait in every shadow. Even Asen rides from Tarnovo toward Tarnovgrad, his retinue trailing behind, cloaks snapping in the winter wind. Snowflakes cut the sky like spears. Hooves beat against frozen stone. Then the silence shatters. Blood stains the white road. Rebels scatter into mountain caves chanting his name. Asen! Asen! Their cries crash against icy cliffs like a war drum. And then, the betrayal, one of his own. Ivanko, a noble snake, lunges with a dagger. Steel tears the air. The blade rips into Asen's chest. Blood blooms across his furs, black against the snow. The king staggers, reels. But here is the rot, the mystery. Some say he died instantly, left bleeding in the road like a slaughtered beast. Others swear loyal guards dragged him into the Rhodope Mountains, hidden away in secret caves. No grave ever bore his name. No bells tolled for his passing. And so he became legend, the hidden czar. A king not dead, but waiting, sleeping beneath the mountains until Bulgaria cries out for him again. Even now his name burns in nationalist mouths, carried like a weapon. Because a vanished king does not stay gone. He becomes a phantom, a symbol, a curse, a ghost that bleeds into politics centuries later. What terrifies us is not just that Ivan Asen disappeared. It's the thought that such kings return, dragging their old wounds back with them, reopening the scars of nations. But if missing kings can be phantoms, what happens when they are children? Royal heirs swallowed whole by stone walls, never seen again. Number 5. Edward V and Richard of Shrewsbury, the princes in the Tower, swallowed by stone. England, 1483. Rain lashes London's cobblestones. Church bells moan while black banners whip above the Tower of London. Inside its gray, suffocating walls, two boys wait in the candlelight. Edward V, 12 years old, rightful King of England. Beside him, his brother Richard, only 9. Children in velvet, heirs to a throne drenched in blood. At first the illusion holds, they are dressed well, served by nobles, treated as princes should be. But the visits thin, smiles fade. Guards tighten around their chambers like a noose. Then, nothing. One day they simply vanish. No funerals, no graves, no bodies. Rumors crawl through London's taverns like rats. Richard murdered them to steal the crown. Or maybe the boys were smuggled away into shadow, hidden forever. But the tower never tells its secrets. Decades later, workmen repairing a stairwell crack into stone and drag out a wooden box. Inside, 2 small skeletons twisted together. Are they the princes? No one knows. DNA cannot prove it. The bones rot in Westminster Abbey under a name that isn't theirs, marked only as the princes. Because the real horror isn't just that 2 children disappeared. It's that centuries later, England still cannot answer whether its rightful king lies rotting under the stairs. Sometimes the darkest shadows in history are shaped like children. Royal voices strangled before they ever ruled. But not all vanished kings were trapped in stone. Some rode out into fire and snow, hunted by assassins and dissolved into legend. Number 6, King Charles Edward Stuart, the king who fled into the Highlands and into legend. They found the palace gutted, the throne abandoned, his name scratched out of every record like he'd never existed. That's how Charles Edward Stuart's story ended. But let me drag you back to where it began. Scotland, 1746. A red-coated army claws north beneath black skies, British drums pounding frozen earth. Above them rise the Highland Mountains, jagged as the teeth of gods. And in their shadow rides a young man with burning blue eyes, Charles Edward Stuart. History calls him Bonnie Prince Charlie. He calls himself king, heir to the exiled Stuart line, rightful ruler of Britain. Thousands of Highland clans bleed their loyalty for him. Bagpipes scream through the glens. Banners of white roses whip in the wind. The dream feels alive until April 16, 1746. Culloden Moor. Cannons roar. British shot rips through tartan ranks. The mud turns to tar-black blood. The Jacobite army collapses into corpses. And Charles? He slithers off the battlefield while loyal Highlanders choke to death in the mire. The king in exile becomes the king in hiding. He flees into the mountains, hunted like a wolf. He sleeps under heather, shivers through rain, burrows into caves. Flora MacDonald smuggles him across the sea disguised as a maid, skirts hiding his coward's heart. British officers tear through villages. Where is the pretender? Where is your king? But no one sells him out. The Highlands protect their ghost. Charles escapes to France, yet whispers refuse to die. For decades, Highlanders swear they see him in disguise, wandering the glens, haunting the mountains, waiting for the Stuarts to rise again. Old men murmur in the Isle of Skye, he will come again, because even in failure, a vanished king rots into a symbol. And in Bonnie Prince Charlie's name, Scotland's hunger for identity still burns. Sometimes a king's disappearance doesn't just erase him, it tears open a wound in his people. A wound that never closes. A wound that keeps bleeding long after the king himself has faded into the hills. But Charles was not the only ruler swallowed by battle and rumor. The next vanished king was more than a warrior. He was a saint. Number 7, King Olaf II of Norway, the saint who vanished in blood. Norway, summer of 1030. The fjords glitter beneath a low, merciless sun. Longships groan in salt-stung harbors. At the prow stands King Olaf Haraldsson, tall, red-bearded, a man torn between blood and holiness. Once he raided England's coasts, a Viking butcher with fire in his hands. But something broke inside him. He bent his knee to Christ. He returned home not as a raider, but as a zealot. And zealots burn. He built churches, drowned villages in baptism, stamped out the old gods with fire and iron. But holy men make enemies faster than they make converts. Norway's nobles plotted, whispering knives behind closed doors. By 1030, they moved to erase him. Olaf rallied his loyalists and marched to reclaim his throne. At Stiklestad, the sky blackened and the air screamed with battle cries. Axes split shields. Steel howled. Olaf fought like a storm at the center, his sword carving bodies into pulp, his mail shirt dripping with blood. Then, a flash. A spear tore his side. The king staggered, his lifeblood soaking the earth. His men dragged him into the forest, and then, silence. Here lies the rot. Did he die that day, body hidden from desecration? Or did he crawl east into Kiev and Rus, vanishing under another name, biding his time? Whispers spread. Olaf is not dead. He is raising an army. He will return. The church crowned him a saint. At Nidaros Cathedral, pilgrims wept before his shrine. Some swore his wounds glowed faintly in the night. Others claimed a scent of wildflowers bled from his bier. Miracles multiplied, the blind saw, the lame walked. But the truth remained buried, his bones never proven. To Norwegians, Olaf is not just a king, he is a father, a phantom, a holy shadow. They say he still waits. Every torchlit procession on St. Olaf's Day whispers the same question. Did our king die as a martyr, or did he vanish into legend, waiting to come home? Because the darkest truth is this: we don't just mourn kings. We mourn our need to believe heroes don't rot, that they live on, even if only in the lies we tell ourselves to keep hope alive. But Olaf was not the last shadow, for the next king on our list did not fall in battle. He disappeared under the crushing weight of betrayal. Number 8, King Charles XII of Sweden, the warrior king who bled out in a trench of ghosts. Sweden, early 1700s. Snow claws across pine forests. Cannons rip the sky over the Baltic. At the center of the carnage rides Charles XII, barely 15 when the crown lands on his head. A boy but a lion, the lion of the north. He shuns gold robes, wears plain blue, sleeps under frozen skies, fights at the front like a soldier possessed. His victories defy logic. He crushes Russia, Denmark, Saxony. His men worship him. His enemies whisper one word: unstoppable. But nothing is unstoppable. 1709, the Battle of Poltava. Peter the Great grinds Charles's army into the dirt. Survivors stumble blind into the Russian winter. Thousands freeze, starve, collapse in silence. Charles slips into Ottoman exile. For 5 long years he plots. His letters drip with ice and fury. I shall return. I shall reclaim my throne. 1710, he does return. Hungry for one last war? This time, Norway. December 11, 1718. Charles prowls the trenches under a pale moon. Snow drifts over wooden palisades. Officers beg him, keep your head down. He doesn't. He never does. Then, the whistle of death. A bullet cracks the night, buries itself in his temple. Charles drops, silent, skull split. But here's the rot. No one agrees where the shot came from. Some swear it was the enemy. Others hiss it was his own men, sick of bleeding for a mad king who treated war like a religion. Within hours, his body vanishes from the public. The exact spot of his death becomes a riddle. Years later, surgeons crack his coffin. His skull is incomplete. Pieces missing. Whispers spread. His brain was stolen, smuggled out to erase whatever secrets he carried to the grave. To this day, Sweden argues, was Charles murdered by the hand of fate or betrayed by his own? Cut down not by enemy fire, but by the disgust of a nation done with endless slaughter. Because the deadliest assassins are not always soldiers with muskets. Sometimes it's the silent hatred of a people whose patience has snapped. Charles's end is a trench-side riddle, a bullet wrapped in conspiracy. But if he died in moonlight, the next king simply slipped away into night, leaving his empire to choke and burn. Number 9. Emperor Mo of Jin, the king who fled into oblivion. China, 1234. Snow claws at the walls of Kaifeng. The city burns, choking on smoke and screams. The Mongols under Ogadei Khan pour south like a plague, an unstoppable tide of arrows and hooves that erase entire villages in a single storm. Nothing withstands them. Nothing survives. Inside the dying city sits Emperor Mo, the last ruler of the Jin dynasty, a man born into failure, chained to a throne already crumbling. His generals circle him like wolves, ready to betray. His empire rots from years of siege. Famine gnaws the bones of his people. The gates burst, the Mongols swarm, and the emperor sheds his crown like it never mattered. He pulls on a humble robe and slithers into a secret tunnel beneath his palace. Dust strangles the air. Torchlight dances on stone. He crawls out into darkness, into the screaming chaos of refugees, and then he is gone. The Mongols scour the countryside. No emperor, no corpse, no triumph. Only whispers. Some say he was seized and executed in secret, his blood spilled quietly so no one could mourn. Others claim he shed his name, shaved his head, and wandered the land as a monk. Once a king, now a ghost in rags. A few chronicles hint he crossed into Korea, hiding behind a stolen identity. The Jin dynasty died with him, or without him. The Mongols tightened their fist around northern China, and the world moved on. But Emperor Mo's fate, it dissolved into smoke. Because no matter how high you climb, once you vanish, history eats you alive. Power means nothing when no one remembers your face, and sometimes the cruelest fate is not to die, but to be erased. But our next royal mystery cuts closer to home. Number 10. Mansa Musa's predecessor, the king who vanished chasing the edge of the world. West Africa, early 1300s. The Mali Empire burns like gold beneath the Sahel sun. Dust of wealth drifts through its royal courts, gilding everything it touches. Traders march in with ivory, salt, treasures dragged from distant horizons. The empire is swollen, unstoppable, and before Mansa Musa crowned himself the richest man who ever lived, there was another. Abu Bakr II, a king with an empire at his feet, but a mind poisoned with obsession. He ruled one of Africa's greatest kingdoms, yet his throne wasn't enough. He was consumed by the horizon, that endless western sea. That question no man could silence. What lies beyond? Curiosity can rot into madness. For Abu Bakr it did. He turned from gold, from power, from everything his people worshipped, and fixed his eyes on the Atlantic. The edge of the world whispered to him, and one day he listened. He would not silence the hunger, he could not kill the question. So he sailed into it and vanished. Number 11. Abu Bakr. 1311 gathers a fleet of 2,000 ships. He loads them with gold, water, provisions to outlast years. He declares with the arrogance of a god, "I will discover what lies beyond the ocean." And then he sails west, from the coast of what is now Senegal, into the Black Atlantic, and he is never seen again. Some historians whisper he reached Mexico. Strange Mesoamerican carvings show ships with curved prows, figures wrapped in African regalia. Proof, maybe, that West Africans touched the Americas centuries before Columbus robbed it. Among the Mandinka, the old stories tell of strangers who arrived in wooden ships, heavy with African gold, carrying instruments unknown to the natives. But proof rots. The ocean erases everything. What remains is a riddle. Abu Bakr's fate still hangs like a phantom. Somewhere beyond the horizon, his ghost still sails. Every wave that smashes against some distant shore is a reminder. Even kings can vanish, chasing the edge of the world. These were kings crowned in gold, but lost in dust and shadows. Some were devoured by deserts, some swallowed by stone walls, some bled out in storms of political murder. But one truth binds them. History never let them go. Their ghosts haunt the throne rooms they abandoned, because sometimes the most terrifying monsters in palaces aren't assassins or traitors. They're the silences left behind when a king simply disappears. So tell me, which vanished king do you believe survived? Drop your thoughts in the comments and hit subscribe, because next we drag into the light 11 kings who kept ruling even after they were buried. And never forget, the most powerful throne of all is the empty one.